UFC Vegas 39 is Saturday. We have Mackenzie Dern versus Marina Rodriguez. And honestly, what's a pretty interesting fight. I'm going to walk through the DraftKings picks and plays. I'll give you some insight on the fights, who I think's overpriced, underpriced, and you can go ahead and use that information and build your lineup. I've sorted the pricing from expensive to less expensive to cheap. So the most expensive fighter on this card is Alexander Romanov at $9,200. If we take a look at Romanov, so we broke down all of these fights. If you want very specific, detailed information on the fight, the matchup, who's going to win, check those videos out. But as far as DraftKings is concerned, if we take a look at Romanov, he scores pretty well, and that's because he's a beast. He comes charging forward like Brock Lesnar, head down, charges forward, moving train, takes you down, just beats the hell out of you. He scored 67 points in the fight against Espino, which honestly, you could argue he lost that fight, and that was a lot closer than it should have been. And what that did is it sort of exposed Alexander Romanov and some of the shortcomings. The problem here, not the problem, but if you're Bandera, the problem for you is we've seen his opponent lose to wrestlers. The person he lost to previously is not half as good as Romanov. I think at $9,200, Romanov is probably a good play. He'll get takedowns. He'll get control time. That'll score pretty well. He's not the absolute killer that maybe people thought he was a few months ago, but he is certainly a dominant wrestler. We've seen his opponent lose grappling exchanges before, despite having a grappling background. So Alexander Romanov's probably a pretty safe play. And there's only 3 9,000 plus fighters on this card. And there's only 10 fighters total. So, it's a weird card in general. If we take a look at Garcia, so we have Steve Garcia, and he's fighting Charlie Ontiveros. It's a weird matchup. Neither one of these guys are fantastic, right? Steve Garcia is not exactly a world beater, but he's a solid grappler, good takedown, decent boxing. He comes forward with big shots. The problem is he's definitely overvalued. His opponent comes out there with a karate stance, does all sorts of crazy stuff, but every single one of his opponent's losses is by knockout. And I feel like the odds makers, the DraftKings line setters looked at that, said, oh, anytime his opponent loses, he gets stopped. Steve's the favorite to win, so he's definitely going to stop. I think too many, I think Steve Garcia is probably going to win this fight. Is he going to be worth $9,100? I don't know. I'm going to stay away. I think he's a little overvalued at $9,100, but I know a lot of people are absolutely loving this. Take a look at Phil Hawes. This is an interesting one. So Phil Hawes, dominant wrestler, power in his hands, ridiculously athletic, wildly explosive, both with his hands and his takedowns. And in his last fight against Dawkins, we saw that he got some cardio. He's learned how to manage his output or train differently, and now he has cardio. He's not gassing immediately. His opponent, he is fighting Dern Win. Dern Win is a phenomenal wrestler in his own right. He's probably a little undersized, but that undersized could be a problem for Phil because Dern Win is short, stocky, big, thick hips. So for Phil to execute a wrestling game plan, he's going to have to get under those hips and shoot, which may not be easy, especially considering the wrestling acumen of Dern Win. So I guess my point here is this is a closer fight than people are thinking it should be, right? Phil Hawes is definitely going to be the better striker. I think he's technically the better wrestler, but if you watch our breakdown, Jacob argued the other side. Man, this is a tough pick because honestly, Phil Hawes, if he wins, is going to score a ton of points, right? He should probably win by stoppage. I don't know if he'll get a takedown, but he has power in his hands, should avoid some takedowns, and could score some big points. But it's very possible that Dern Win comes out there, immediately starts wrestling, takes Phil Hawes down, and Phil Hawes off his back is going to be clueless and have no idea what to do with himself. So $9,000, it's an interesting play. Probably Romanov and Phil Hawes at the 9,000 mark is probably not a bad play. But I'll tell you right now, I like Randy Brown at $8,800. $8,800, he is way better than Jared Gooden. everywhere except raw power. He is literally better everywhere, has more ways to win. I absolutely, and if you look at his wins, look how many points he scores in his wins, 110, 90, 96. It's possible he can get knocked out here because Jared Gooden possesses that kind of power, but Jared Gooden is like first round knockout or bust. Randy Brown is far, far better. So I'd rather spend the $8,800 on Randy Brown. And then if we take a look at Chris Gutierrez, so Chris Gutierrez, nasty kickboxer, just an absolute nasty kickboxer, lights up your legs, really limits what you can do and where you can go because of what he does to your legs. He's fighting Felipe Colares, BJJ black belt, and has a path to victory with the grappling and the wrestling. So I'm not going to spend the $8,900 on Chris. I do think Chris wins, but it's very possible he gets taken down and held down and loses that kind of fight. But Randy Brown at $8,800 is a great pick. This one's a weird one because Lupita Guadalupe, this fight actually dropped. DraftKings hasn't been updated yet. She has a new opponent. Her new opponent is much tougher than Sam Hughes, her original opponent. But I still think Lupita Guadalupe is probably a good value, $8,600. She is very, very good. Let's scroll our way down here. Look at some of the less expensive fighters. Listen, Jared Bandera, it's possible he wins that fight. But if we look at the Spivak fight, this was against, Spivak was a decent grappler with decent takedowns, and he absolutely worked Jared Bandera that entire fight. Dude scored 8 points. He looked great against Taffa, but that was striking. I don't know what he's going to be able to do or not do against Romanov in the striking department. So I'm going to stay away from Jared Bandera. Ontiveros over Garcia. Listen, that is one. It's very possible he can catch him with some flashy, wild spinning stuff. I just don't see that happening. Look at this, 1 point. He made his debut against Kevin Holland at 185 pounds. When the reality is he's a 170 pounder, and now he's dropping down to 155. There's a lot of question marks. In my final DraftKings breakdown is when I'll take a closer look at Ontiveros, what he looked like on the scale. And the last fight we'll look at, let's take a look, or we'll look at two. Tim Elliott, I like Tim Elliott to win this fight. Look at Tim Elliott's wins. He is a workhorse. Look at his losses. Even in losses, he's almost putting up 50 points. A ton of takedowns in these losses. Wild activity. His losses are because he makes poor decisions. He's just too excited to win, too eager to win, makes poor decisions sometimes, and puts himself in a bad spot. I do think he will win this fight in the underdog slot. I love him at $7,700. And then let's take a look at Marina Rodriguez. I like Marina Rodriguez. I think Marina Rodriguez is going to win. Listen, Mackenzie Dern is a wild, phenomenal grappler, but she needs to get it to the ground to grapple, and she has a 10% takedown success rate. I think Marina Rodriguez is the better fighter literally everywhere except the ground. She could probably keep it on her feet, avoid the takedowns, and just touch up and potentially even stop Mackenzie Dern. $8,000. I do like her for my lineup, and she scores really well in her wins. Let me know what you guys think of these picks and plays. It's a weird card. We're down to 9 fights. We'll have 10 once they officially add Lupita Guadalupe's new opponent. Overall, it should be an interesting week, and these small cards are the ones that sort of make a big difference. Every single fighter is that much more important. wewantpicks.com/DraftKings. Join in our free league, win free money, be a subscriber, or remember, I'll see you on Saturday.